chat එකේ කිව්වනම් හරි මේ all right, okay. Okay, so we will talk today. We will talk about the inventory valuation. Right? So I have already shared the tube with you in the group chat, in the WhatsApp group chat, right? So during the previous sessions, we already discussed about what means by management accounting and how it differs from financial accounting, and what are the usage of the management accounting, and we identify what are the different types of cost: direct cost, indirect cost, and fixed cost and variable cost. And based on the demand, the future demand, we can calculate what will be the total cost based on the formula that we have developed in the last session, right? And now we are moving to managing the inventory, especially calculating the inventory valuation, right? And based on the inventory valuation, we would able to adjust or manipulate, I would say manipulate profit, right? So one technique of manipulating profit is the inventory valuation. So in the inventory valuation, there are various ways, right? So we call it as FIFO, LIFO, ALCO, and it can be randomly pick up. So what does it mean by inventory, right? First, you need to understand what is mean by inventory. Inventory is any type of material that you are used to produce the finished goods, right? For example, if it is a garment factory, then the fabric would be the material which will be used to produce the clothes or trousers or shirts, right? And if it is a electronic, let's say a laptop or electronic device manufacturing or assembling company, so the materials would be the parts, right? The assembly parts would be the materials, right? So these materials normally we are stored in normally in big warehouses, right? And you have to have these materials in stock for various reasons. For example, in order to smoothen the production flow, you have to keep this material and purchase, and you have to have purchase regularly from your vendors or suppliers to maintain the production process smoothly. Otherwise, if there are no materials, you have to stop the production, right? So, so each and every time, most organizations, they keep materials in the warehouse, and at the end of the day, you have to value that inventory because it's a current asset. Inventory is a current asset, right? So you include that current asset information in the balance sheet. Apart from that, you have to value it in order to take decisions under management accounting. I told you management accounting, it's all about the internal controls or internal decision making. So in order to make decisions by the managers or directors or any authorized person in the organization, you need to have facts, right? You need to have the information. So the inventory valuation is kind of a couple of techniques that you can use to value the existing materials in your warehouse, right? So you can value the materials based on certain methods, like you can value it for by the purchase price or the current market price, right? For example, let's say that you have 1,000 units of material which will be used for the production in the upcoming or in the next month, right? So in order, when you move the inventory to the production flow, right? When you move the when we call this when you move the material, කියන අමුද්‍රව්‍ය ඔයගලන්ගේ production flow එකට යවන්න කලින් ඔයගලන් බලනවා කොයි විදිහටද ඒ අමුද්‍රව්‍ය ටික යවන්නේ කියලා, right? So you have to assess them first, and you have to select a method of how to value that. Whether you value based on the first in, first out, that means the units that you purchased first, you will move to the production, right? That is first in, first out, right? For example, let's say that you have materials that is purchased last year December, right? And you have materials that is purchased on January and also February. So if you decide as the manager, if you decide to issue the materials that you purchased on December, that means the oldest units to the production process, we call it as first in, first out process. First in, first out process, because you are moving the goods which you purchased in the beginning or the beginning of the periods, right? Again, ඔගොල්ලෝ මුලින්ම ගත්ත materials ටික production එකට යවන්න. ඒකට අපි කියනවා first in, first out. Then we have another technique that is called last in, first out. That means you will issue the units or the materials which you purchased recently, most recently, right? But there are certain drawbacks as well, because you have to check the expiry as well. If the old goods are closer to expiry, then you have to move them. So that's why I told you that there are certain techniques, and based on the circumstances, you have to make the correct decision whether to use the FIFO or LIFO, right? And then we have the average method. What is meant by average method? Average method is you are calculating an average figure based on the total inventory units that you stored in the warehouse, right? So that figure will be used. And so at the end of the day, you are calculating the average cost of that material and then value the inventory. That is called AVCO method, right? So we will discuss one by one, and then we will do some calculations and exercises and examples so that you can have a good understanding. Right. Okay, so let's take an example, right? So in here you can see there are three units, let's say three materials, A, B, C, which is received, the initial, the unit A is received in June, and unit B received in July, and unit C received in August. Right, and you can see gradually the prices has been increased during the periods, right? So there's a kind of an inflation. So the materials that has been purchased in June, which has a cost of 100. So the least cost is there in the June, right? So if the company decide to use FIFO method, which implies the first in, first out, then out of these three units, what will be the unit that will be used for the manufacturing? Will it be A, B, or C? If the company uses FIFO, that means the company use the units that purchase first, right? So the company purchase the units A, unit of material A, at the earliest, which is in June. So if the company use the FIFO method, they will first issue material A for the production, and then you have to take the value as 100, because that is the price of the materials that will be issued to the production. So you have to take that price, which is $100. And then after completing all the materials in units A batch, then you move to the units B. So in the units B, in that batch, you have purchased in July and worth of 106 per unit. So after completing the utilization of the unit A, the per material A batch, then you have to issue the material B to the production, and you have to value the material B. That means the value of $106 will be used for the inventory valuation. And finally, you will issue the material C, right? So again, මෙතන ගත්තොත් මුලින්ම first in first out එක ගත්තාම මුලින්ම material එක තමයි යවන්නේ. මොකද ඒක හරණම එක. ජූන් වල තමයි ඒක ගත්තේ. ඊළඟට ජූලයි වල ගත්ත තව batch එකක්, තව එකක් C වල ගත්තා. අර AB පිළිවෙලට තමයි යන්නේ. කියන්නේ අපි බඩු ගත්ත පිළිවෙලට තමයි අපි production එකට issue කරන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ ගත්ත value එක තමයි අපි use කරන්නේ material inventory valuation එකේ. දැන් ඔය කියන්නේ FIFO method එක. එතකොට FIFO method එක අපි example එකකින් මේක බලමු කොහොමද calculate කරන්න කියලා. අපි ඊළඟට LIFO එකට යමු. Right? So we'll do this exercise. Okay, let me open an Excel because it's easier to calculate these things in the Excel. Right. Right. So first we will calculate the FIFO, right? So in this example, you can see, right, there is an opening balance of 1st of May, which units are 100, right? And the per unit cost is $2. That means each unit has been purchased with a value of $2, right? And the total cost as at 1st of May is 200. And then on 3rd of May, there's a receipt of 400 units. And at that time, the purchase has been made of these 400 units and per unit cost is 2.1, right? 2.1 is the per unit cost. And then there is an issue. What is mean by issue? Issue means you are issuing the goods to the production. That is called issue, right? So you are issuing the goods to the production, and the total production units are 200, right? And then you have to decide which price should be taken in order to calculate that 200 units, right? To value that 200 units. And then again on 9th of May, there is a receipt of 300 units and per unit cost is 2.13. You can see it's a slight increase compared to the 3rd of May. And then 11th of May, there is a issue of 400 units. And on 18th of May, there is again receipt of 100 units. And you can see the amount is 2.4. That is the purchase price. And then on 20th May, there is an issue of 100 units, right? So we'll do an example and see how the inventory valuation is calculated, right? And then how the cost of sales would be calculated, right? So first it's the date. So I will form this data, right, into a table. So first one is the receipts. And then issues, that means issues to the production, and then the total. Right. So this is quantity, price, and the total. Quantity, values, total. Okay. So, we have to insert the data, the relevant data for this table, so that you can calculate the cost of sales. Cost of sales is the total value of the issues, right? ඒ කියන්නේ cost of sales කියලා කියන්නේ ඔයගේ sale එක කරපු sale එකට අදාළ total cost එක. එතකොට මේ total cost එක ඔයා calculate කරන්නේ issues වල, issues කියන්නේ ඔයා production එකට issue කරපු total units වල valuation එකෙන් තමයි ඔයා cost of sales ගණනය කරන්නේ. ඒකට අපි use කරන method එක තමයි දැන් මේ method එක තමයි FIFO කියන method, right? Right. On 1st of May, right, there is a opening balance of 100 units, right? Yeah, color again. Right. On 1st of May, there is a total units of 100, and the per unit cost is $2, and total is 200, right? 100 into 2, which is $200, right? හරි. ඒක අපි මේක straight forward, right? මොකද unit 100ක් තිබ්බා ඒ period එක මුල මේ පළවෙනිදට වෙද්දි. එතකොට අපි එක unit එකක් ඒ වෙලාවේ purchase කරලා තිබ්බේ $2 දෙකකට. එතකොට total value එක $200, right? හරි. And on 3rd of May, we have another receipt of 400 units, right? 400 unit receipt එකක් තියෙනවා, right? So this is a receipt, right? This is a receipt. So the per unit cost of each unit of this particular receipt would be $2.1, right? $2.1. So the total cost would be how much? 400 into 2.1. How much? It is 84, right? Yeah. 84. Right? Sorry, it will be 840. Right? That is the total cost of this 400 units. And then at the end of the day, we have to calculate the total figure. That would be 100 plus 200, which would be 500, right? And 500 units, and the total cost would be 200. That is the beginning of the period value, plus the addition of this 840, because we are receiving the materials to the inventory, right? So you have the inventory and you can value it. So you have to add back that value. So that means you have added this 200 to the receipt value, total receipt value, which is 840. So the total value at the end of the 3rd of May, which would be $1,040, right? Clear enough? අපි දැන් අලුත් receipt එකක් ගත්තොත් අපි ඒක එකතු කරනවා. එතකොට issue එකක් නම් එතනින් අපි අයින් කරන්න ඕන. issue කියන අපි production එකට දෙනවා. එතකොට inventory, ඒ කියන්නේ warehouse එකේ බඩු ටික නැති හින්දා අපිට ඒ valuation එකෙන් අපි අයින් කරන්න ඕන. Right. On 4th of May, right? There's a 4th of May, there's an issue. Right? Issue means you are moving the units to the production, right? That is on 4th of May. And the number of units would be 200. Sorry, should be a issue of 200, right? And then what should be the unit price? So this will be the critical factor, right? You have to decide which price to be taken for these 200 units, right? Whether it's the initial price or the latest price. So I told you we are now using, the management has decided to using FIFO model. So for our calculation, we have to adhere or the comply to the FIFO model. That means we are taking the valuation or the price from the initial purchase, right? So out of this 200, we will use this 100 that exists on the beginning of the period, right? So we will use this 100, right? We will utilize this 100 and it will be valued at $2, right? So that will be 200. 2 into 100. And then the remaining ones, that means how much is the remaining? Out of 200, we utilize 100 from the original receipt, original balance. And then we need to issue another 100 and we should value at the next receipt. That means the next available receipt is on 3rd of May, right? Out of 400, we have to issue 100 from here. So this 100 is already been taken. So I will remove that. Right? I will remove this, right? Right. And this one we will, so this 100 is already been issued and out of this 400, we utilize again 100, right? Me 100 again, see a paragraph. Right? Right? And the value is 2.1. $2.1. So the total valuation is 210, right? And at the end of the day, right, the quantity would be how much? 500 minus 200. That means 300, right? It's 500. That is the total quantity exists and you issue 200. So the remaining units would be 300, right? And the valuation would be 1040 the initial value and we have to deduct this 200 and again 210, right? So the value is 630, right? තේරුණාද මේ වෙනකම් ඔයගලන්ට තේරුණාද මොකක්ද තේරෙන්නේ නැති දෙයක් තියෙනවා, right? ඔයගොල්ලෝ මතක තියාගන්න ඕනේ මෙතනදී අපි FIFO කියන එක යූස් කරන්නේ. එතකොට අපි ගන්න ඕනේ valuation එකට අපි production එකට issue කරද්දී ඒ unit වල valuation එක විදියට ගන්නේ අපි ඒකේ තියෙන පරණම මුලින්ම අපි purchase කරපු price, right? එතකොට ඒ units ගන්න ඉවරුනහම ඊළඟ batch එකට යනවා. එතකොට ඒකේ price එක ගන්න. ඒක ඉවරුනහම ඊළඟ එකට යනවා. මේ විදියට තමයි අපි යන්නේ. අන්තිමේ ඉඳන් තමයි පටන් අරගෙන අපි utilize කරන්නේ මේ materials, right? Okay. Now we will move to the next one, that is on 9th of May. Ninth of May, we have a receipt of 300 units. 300 units and the receipt value is 2.12. Right, 2.12. And the total cost would be how much? 300 into 2.12. 300 into 2.12 is $636. Right? So at the end of the day, that means at the end of the 9th of May, the total units of the value, the warehouse would be the 300 is the remaining balance up to that date, plus the addition. Okay, 300 received on the same day. So for the total, we have to add back. So the total units would be 600 and the valuation would be 630 plus this receipt value, total receipt value on 9th of May, which is 636. So altogether, it will be 1,266. 1,266, right? Understood? Okay. Now move to the next one, that is on 11th of May. 11th of May, we are again issuing 400 units, right? So we are issuing 400 units, right? So what is the remaining receipt that we are having, right? Because on 1st of May, we have 100, we have utilized all. And on 3rd of May, the batch from that 3rd of May, we utilize only 100. So 300 is remaining. So out of this 400, 300 can be taken from here. Right? 300 can be taken from here. Units, and we should value at 2.1. 2.1 units. Right? So the valuation is 2.1 into 300, it's 630, right? Dollars. And then out of this 400 of the units that we need to issue, we only issued 300 units. So the remaining 100 we have to take, right? So which batch we should take, right? This 100 needs to be taken from this batch. Right? And the value is $2.12. Right. So it will be 212, right? So at the end of 11th May, the total number of units in the warehouse would be 600 minus this 400, because 400 you already issued from the warehouse to the production. You can have a production process. So පාවිච්චි කරා මෙතන 600 400 මේ 400 පාවිච්චි කරා. So ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ කීයද? 200 units, right? The valuation would be the initial valuation we have at the end of 9th May, it's 1,266. So we have to deduct these two values. That means 630 minus 230. So the value is 424. Right? 424. Got it? Understood? Any questions? Okay. Assume you don't have any questions. Okay. Now we move to the other next record. On 18th of May, there is a receipt of 800 units. So 18th of May, there is a receipt of 100 units. And the unit price is 2.4. So the price has been increased. Right? Price has been increased. So the valuation would be 100 into 2.4, which is $240. Right? And at the end of 18 May, the total units would be 200 plus this 100 received, and the total quantity would be 300 units, right? So at the end of 18 May, we can calculate the total valuation. So we have to add the receipt value because it's an asset to us. We have to add that receipt value, which is 240, to the previous day's balance, which is 424. So the total would be 664. Right. Then on 20th May, there is a gain issue of 100 units. So this 100 units needs to be issued from the oldest receipt, right? Oldest available receipt, which is available receipt. Oldest available receipt is on 9th May. So we have to take that well. Right. And this 100 we are taking from there. So the valuation is 100 into 2.12. So it is 212. And at the end of the day, the total value would be, the total quantity would be 300 minus 100, which is 200 units, right? You can see it's 200 units. And then the valuation is 664 minus 212, which is 452. This is the closing balance. Closing balance, right? So the closing balance based on FIFO method equals 452, right? And the total value of the receipt would be the cost of sales. So the cost of sales equals the total of the issues, right? That is 1,464, right? Okay. So normally when it comes to the calculations, FIFO, LIFO, or the inventory calculation, it is easy to formulate this kind of table and to calculate values, right? Okay, if you want, you can take a screenshot, but I have already given the notes as well. But you can, it's better you can take a screenshot and then you can attach this to your printed PPT. Right? මොනවාරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද? තේරෙනවද මම කියපු දේවල්? නැත්නම් මම අපව එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරන්න ඕනේද? right? මොනවාරි ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් chat එකේ දාන්න. නැත්නම් ඔයගොල්ලෝ කතා කරලා හරි කියන්න. right. අපි එන ඊළඟ එකට යමු. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් අරගන්න නැති කියලා මම හිතනවා. right. Okay. So the calculations are there, and these are the pros and cons, that is benefits and the weaknesses or the drawbacks, right? So the advantages would be it's a logical pricing method. In the FIFO method, can මුලින්ම අපි price එක ඒ කියන්නේ ප්‍රයිස් එක ගනිද්දී අපි මුලින්ම පර්චේස් කරපු ප්‍රයිස් එක ගන්න එක ඇත්තටම ඒකේ වැදගත්කමක් තමයි අපි ඒක ගොඩක් වෙලාට ලොජිකල් ප්‍රයිසින්. කියන්නේ අපි ඒක සාමාන්‍යයෙන් විදියට ගත්තොත් එහෙම අපි පරණ එක තමයි කියන්නේ මුලින්ම ගත්ත එක තමයි මුලින් පාවිච්චි කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒක ඉතින් ලොජිකල්. So we can explain it to the customers. Sorry, from with the management as well. Right? So mostly what you purchase initially will taken to use. Otherwise, it will get expired. And then it is easy to understand, explain to the managers, right? It's easy to understand. And then the third one is the inventory valuation can be near to the valuation based on replacement cost, kind of a replacement cost. You are replacing the existing units and the cost is relevant or more close to the replacement cost. But there are certain disadvantages. So in order to identify the FIFO calculation figures, you need to identify the units that the batches separate. කියන්නේ ඔයාට ගන්න මේ බඩුව ඔයා වෙන වෙනම ඔයා warehouse එකේ ඒ තියෙන තැන් වලින් identify කරගන්න ඕනේ මොන batch එකකින්ද ආවේ කියලා. කොහොම කලවම් කරන්න බෑ batches ටික. ඒ කියන්නේ අතකො materials ටික කලවම් කරොත් ඒකට ඔයගලන්ට හිතා ගන්න බෑ මොකද්ද මේ මොන batch එකට අදාළවද අපි cost එක ගන්නවන්නේ. එතකොට ඒ විදිහට අර operation එක ටිකක් කම්බස්. Right? And then managers may difficult to compare cost to make decisions. So it is not the current market value, right? So the managers might get a little bit difficult for ongoing decision making. And if there is an inflationary period, right, you can price එක වැඩි වෙනවා නම් එන්නෙන්නම ඒ වගේ වෙලාවකදී අපි FIFO පාවිච්චි කරනොත් එතකොට ඇත්තටම කියනවා නම් දැන් තියෙන මාකට් වැලියු එකට වඩා ගොඩක් අඩුවෙන් තමයි FIFO එකේදී පාවිච්චි වෙන්නේ. දැන් මේක ගත්තොත් අපි කලින් එක්සැම්පල් එක උනත් මේක උනත් ඔයගලන්ට පෙන්නේ මෙතන මේ වැලුවේෂන් එක ගනිද්දි 2.12 කියලා 20 වෙනිදා. නමුත් 18 වෙනි ඊට කලින් දවස් දෙකකට කලින් අපි අරන් තියෙන්නේ 2.40ට ඩොලර්ස්. නමුත් අපි වැලුවේෂන් එක ගත්තේ 2.12. කියන්නේ අපි 9 වෙනිදා ගත්ත වැලුවේෂන් එක තමයි ගත්තේ. කියන්නේ අපි FIFO use කරොත් අපිට current market valuation එක අපි පාවිච්චි කරන්නේ. right? ඒකෝර ඒක impact වෙනවා decision making වල. right. Okay, this is a small exercise. I will give you 8 minutes. Try to do this. exercise. So similarly, we have to place it in the Excel. That would be the more easier method. So in this example, right, you can see there's a balance. There's opening balance in 5th of June, and the number of units are 30, and per unit cost is 2.5, and the total value is 75. And 8th of June, there's a receipt of 20, and the receipt value is $3 per unit, and the total value is 60. And on 10th of June, there is an issue of 10 units, and you have to calculate the total valuation. And also in 14th June, there is an issue of 20 units, and you have to calculate the valuation of that 20 units. And on 18th June, there is a receipt of 40 units, and the per unit value is 2.4. So the total value is $96, right? The receipt total value is $96, right? So you can use the same formula, right, in order to calculate the values, right? Right. Okay. So right on a 5th of June, 5th of June, there is a total opening balance of 30 units. Unit price is 2.5. Total is 75, right? And on 8th of June, right? 8th of June, you have a receipt of 20 units. Unit price is $3. And the total cost is 20 into $3, which is $60, right? $60. So you have to add back here, right? 30 plus 20, which is 50 units. And total valuation is $75 plus this purchase value, which is 60. So the total is 135. And then on 10th of June, there is an issue of 10 units. 10th of June, issue of 10 units, right? So these 10 units, we have to take it from the initial receipt, which is 2.5. Right? Because we are using 5. So the valuation is 10 into 2.5, which is $25, right? At the end of the day, the total quantity is 50. We have issues of 10 units, which is issued to the production. So the remaining quantity as at 10th of June is 40 units. And the valuation is 135. We have to deduct the total valuation that issued to the production, which is 25. So 132 minus 25 is $107, right? $107. And then on 14th June, we have again issue of 20 units. And this time we also take this units from the initial receipts, because in the initial receipt quantity is 30. We have utilized 10 units out of 30 on 10th of June, and remaining 20 will be issued on 14th of June. So the value is 2.5. එතන value එක ගත්ත විදිය තේරුණා නේද? මොකද අර initial quantity initial balance එකේ 30න් අපි 10ක් අරගත්ත 10 වෙනිදා issue production එකේට issue කරපු batch එකට ඊළඟට ඒ කියන්නේ මිනිත්තු 20ක් ඉතුරු වුණා අපි 10ක් යවුවට පස්සේ ඒ 20 අපි අරගන්නවා 14 වෙනිදා ප්‍රොඩක්ෂන් එකට යවනවා. ඒකට ප්‍රයිස් එක වෙන්නේ ඒ ගත්ත ඔරිජිනල් ප්‍රයිස් එකම තමයි. So this is 20 into 2.5, which is $50, right? $50, and the remaining balance would be 40 minus 20, which is 20 units, and the cost would be 107 minus 50, which is 57, right? Got it? Okay. And next point, it's 18th of June. We have again receipt of 40 units, and per unit cost is 2.4. So the price is reduced, right? That is good. Price is reduced. So the total value, receipt value is 96. It's given. And then at the end of the day, the value, the quantity at the warehouse would be increased by 40. So 20 is the previous quantity, and after receipt, it will be increased by 40 units. So altogether, there will be 60 units in the warehouse, right? And then the valuation of the receipt needs to be added for the existing valuation, which is 57. You have to add the valuation of the receipt, which would be 96. So 57 plus 96 would be 153. 153. And on 20th June, there is an issue of 6 units, right? So for this 6 units, you have to take the value of this 30 we have utilized. We have utilized this. We have utilized this 30, and then the next batch is on 5th of June, 8th of June, right? 8th of June. It should be 6, and the per unit cost is $3. So altogether, the issue valuation of the issuing materials would be $3 into 6 units, which would be $18, right? So at the end of the day, you have to deduct the existing units of 60 and minus 6, which should be 54 units. And the total valuation would be 153 minus the total issue value, 88. So it will be 135, right? Right, $135. Right. Okay, so if you are not done, you can do it now. right? Okay, 10 June, 12 June, 10 June, 42. Sorry, yeah, you are correct. It's 135 minus 25, which is 110. You are correct. Thank you for finding it out. So 110. Yeah. So the value is 138. So for answers, so A is this one, the valuation of 10th June, 100, it's $25. And B is $50. C is $18. And D is 138. Right? So those are the valuation or the answers, right? Right. ඔගොල්ලෝ මේකේ ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් ගහගන්න මේ කරන්න බැරි වුණා නම් okay, let's move to the next part. That is last in, first out. So we talked about the FIFO method, right? FIFO method. Now we are talking about the LIFO method. LIFO is the last in, first out. Last in, first out, right? That is the opposite of the FIFO. In the FIFO method, we are taking the value from the initial purchasers, right? The initial purchasers. But in LIFO, it's called last in, first out. So we are receiving or issuing the goods at the latest market price and the latest units, right? So LIFO assumes that materials are issued out of the inventory in the reserve in the reverse order to which they were delivered. Most recent deliveries are issued before earlier ones, and issues are priced accordingly. So that you can see that most recent deliveries, right, most recent receipts will be issued to the production, right, at the latest. At the latest, yes. Let's see how it works. So we can use an example, same example that we did for FIFO. We can use it for LIFO as well, right? Sorry. Right. So we can use same example, right? Let's get the structure first. So on 1st of May, right? 1st of May, we have a balance of 100 units. and the unit price is $2. So altogether, the valuation is 200 at the beginning of month. And on 3rd of May, we receive a value material of 400 units. Per unit cost is 2.1. So the total cost would be 400 into 2.1, right? That is $810. Right? 800 and yes. Sorry, 800, not $840, right? And then at the end of 3rd of May, the total units at the inventory would be 100 plus 400 by adding that receipt quantity. Altogether, it's 500 units. And the total valuation is $200 plus the latest total receipt value, which is 840. 840. Right? So the value would be 1,040, right? And on 4th of May, we have a issue of 200 units. So keep in mind, so this is the important part. This is how it differentiates with the FIFO. In the FIFO method, we use the latest price. We use the initial price. But now in the LIFO method, we need to use the latest for unit price. That is from the latest purchase batch. So we have to use $2.10. So since we utilize this 200 out of the recent when we can just note it down that we are taking out 200 units from the latest receipt, right? So the 200 into $2.10 would be how much? 420, right? 420, yes. Yeah. And the total units would be 500. We issued 200. So the remaining units would be 300 units. And the valuation is 1,040 minus 420. Right? Which is 620. $620, right? And then on 9th of May, we have another receipt of 300, right? 300. And the receipt value is 2.12. So the total value is 636. It's given here, right? 636. So at the end of the day, the total quantity would be 300 plus because we have a receipt. So we have to add that. The quantity is again 300. So the total units would be 600 units. And also we have to add the valuation 620 plus the receipt valuation 636. Altogether it will be 1,256. 1,256. And on 11th of May, we have an issue to the production of 400 units, right? So out of this 400, we can take 300 at the latest batch. That is 2.12, right? Latest batch, which would be $636. Then we have the remaining units, because in this 300 is we utilize, because we have to utilize the latest number of units. And the remaining 100 should be taken by the latest batch. So the latest batch is already utilized. So we had to take it from the previous batch. This 100 here. right? Into 2.1. It's 210. So the units would be how much? 600 minus 400. At the end of the day, 200 units available. And the amount would be 1256 minus 636 minus 210. It's 408, right? Here. 410, right? And on 18th May, we have another receipt of how much? 100 units. 2.4 is the unit value, and the total cost would be 240, right? So you need to add back that quantity 100. Altogether, it's 300 units, and the valuation increased by 240. So you have to add this 240 to the existing inventory balance of 410. So the total valuation would be $650. Right? $650. And finally, on 20th May, we have to issue gain 100 units. Okay? 100 units at the cost of 2.4, right? Because we have taken the latest unit, so we have to utilize this 100 from here, right? And 240 is the value. Right. So at the end of the day, so the units would be 300 minus 100, which is 200 units, and the valuation will be again reduced by 240. So the value is 410, right? 410. So the closing balance is 410, right? Closing balance 410. It, right? Closing balance 410. Right? This one is the closing balance, and the sum of these, right, is the cost of sale. Cost of sales equals total value of issues equals 420 plus 636 plus 240, 210 plus 240. And 1506. Okay. Okay. Okay, you can take a screenshot as well. How we have proceed. Any questions so far on what we did? Okay. Hope you have taken screenshots, right? Let's move to the PowerPoint. Right. So now we discuss what are the pros and cons, that is the disadvantages and the disadvantages of LIFO method, right? So the advantages would be inventories are issued at a price which is close to current market value. So we are taking the latest market price. So it's more close to the current market value. So it's a plus point for decision making. And managers are continually aware of recent cost when making decisions. So since we are taking the recent purchase values, managers have kind of an indication of the market value. Right. And then disadvantages. So the method can be cumbersome to operate because it sometimes results in several batches being only part used in the inventory records before another batch is received. So it's like this, right? So here you can see uh, some of the units of the receipts are partly being used, right? So here out of 400, 300 is been issued. So this from this batch, 100 units has been remain, right? So likewise, there might be in long term, there might be different batches that may be remaining, right? Small quantities, which mean you need to identify it separately. So it's a cumbersome. And the LIFO is often the opposite to what is physically happening. So it's kind of opposite thing because normally what happens is the materials that in the warehouse, which is the oldest one, will be utilized for the production. But this is the opposite of that, right? So it might be difficult to explain to managers about the LIFO method. As the FIFO as with FIFO, decision making can be difficult because of variation is price. So you can see we are not taking a smoother or the a standard price because it varies. Because based on the purchase cost and the number of units, it will be change, right? The valuation would be change. So those are the pros and the cons of the LIFO method. Okay, I will give you again 10 minutes. Just try this. Try this and you can include the answers in the chat. Right. Okay. Let's do this one. Right. So we are using FIFO to do this. Sorry, not FIFO, but this is for what? Right. Right. We can use the same format to calculate this one as well. Right. So initially on 5th of June, there is a balance of 30 units and $2.5. And the total valuation is 75, right? $75. And then on 8th of June, we have a receipt of 20 units. Dollar value is $3 and the total cost is 60. And at the end of the day, we have to add the number of units 20 to the total, which is 50 units. Right. And then the valuation is $75 plus 60 is 135. Right. And on 10th of June, we have issue of 10 units, right? So we have to take the latest price, which is $3. So the value is 30, and we have to deduct the units 50 out of, sorry, 10 out of 50, which is 40 units. And at the end of 10th June, the value would be 135 minus $30, which is $105, right? Right. Right. And on, sorry, and on 14th June, there is another issue of 20 units. And this time we have to take, right. So here we have to take 10 units for the latest batch, this one. And for 20, we will use from the latest batch, right? We can use only 10 because remaining 10 units only. So we use 10 units from there, from that batch, and it will be $3 per unit, right? And the remaining 10, the remaining 10 can be used. Yeah, remaining 10 can be used from this quantity, 30 units, right? Right. And into 2.5, right? So it will be $25, right? So altogether, the valuation is 55. So the number of units will be reduced by 20 units. And also the total valuation will be reduced by $55. So the amount would be $50, right? Okay. And on 18 June, there's a receipt of 40 units, 2.4 each. and the total value is 96. At the end of the day, the quantity increased by 40. So the total units would be 60, right? And the valuation will be increased by not 96, it is 146. And then finally on 20th June, we have again 6 units will be issued and the value would be 2.4, right? So the quantity would be remaining quantity remaining quantity on 20th June would be 54 units and 146 minus how much is this? 140, right? Sorry, 400 plus 0.40. The value is 131.6. Okay. So this is how it works. So for the value A, it's sorry, the answer for the A is $30. Answer for the B, I did for 20, it's 55. And answer for the C, it's 14.4. And answer for the D, it's 131.6. So these are the answers. So if I are not done, you can take a screenshot or you can adjust what has been made wrong. Sampath, good. You are correct. That's good. So students, please try to do these exercises, right? Because in the exam, you will be given similar questions, right? Okay. So I hope you have take some screenshots if you have not done it. Okay. So this one, I will give you another 5 minutes each. That means 10 minutes. You have to do it for FIFO and the LIFO methods, right? I will give you 10 minutes. Do this exercise for both LIFO and the FIFO methods separate. Okay, so in this exercise, it says a wholesaler had opening inventory of 600 units of product C valued at $50 per unit at the beginning of May, right? And the following receipts and sales are recorded during May, right? So there are certain single receipt and multiple issues, right? So what we will do is we will take the same structure to do this exercise as well, right? Right. So the second we have right, and on 1st of May, beginning of May, let's assume that is 1st of May. The beginning quantity is 600 units and $50 per unit. So altogether, it's 50 into 600, which is $3,000, right? That is on 1st of May. And on 2nd of May, there's a issue of 500 units. So we need to take the issue price should be the first initial one because we are doing the FIFO method first. So it will 50. So total valuation will be 2,500. That is 50 into 500, right? And at the end of the day, the total quantity units would be 1,100, and the total value would be 3,000 plus 2,500, which is 5,500, right? And then on 12th May, 12th of May, we have another, we have a receipt of 800, and the receipt value is 51.5. The valuation is 100 into 51.5, it's 4,241,000. Sorry, this should be 25,000, right? So missing a zero here. Right. And at the end of the day, the total units would be 1,100. It's one. It should be, sorry. And at the end of 12th May, it will be 100. We have add 800, which would be 900 units. And 5,000 plus 41,200, which would be 46,200, right? 46,200. And then on 21st of May, we have another issue of 400 units, and the value should be taken from the initial receipt, which is 50. So 100 will be taken from the initial receipt because the remaining quantity or units here will be 600 minus 500, 100, right? Will be 5,000. And remaining 300 units will be taken from the latest one from this batch. It will be 51.5. 15,000, right? So at the end of the day, there is a total quantity of 900 minus 400. Because 400 we have issued to the production, and the remaining units would be 500. And the total price would be 46,200 minus 5,000 minus 15,000. So it should be the answer. 25,007. And on the final issue is on 29th May, which is of 150 units. And we can take the latest, sorry, not the latest, the remaining receipt of the 12th batch, which is 51.5. So altogether it will be 1.5 into 150, 7,725. So at the end of the day, the units would be 500 minus 150, which is 350. And the amount would be 25,750 minus 7,725 should be, shall we say, 25,750 minus 7,725, which is 18,022, right? So this is the answer, 1,824. Right? If you are not done, you can just try this and please practice, right? මේ වගේ ඒවා එනවා එක්ක 5 4 නැත්නම් ඔක්කොම method එකක් exam එකට එන්න පුළුවන්. So you have to understand and calculate the values, right? Yeah, Sampan, good. Your answers are correct. Very good. Right? මේ කරේ නැත්තම් ලියා ගන්න. මම විනාඩියක් දෙන්න. නැත්නම් ස්ක්‍රීන්ෂොට් එකක් ගහගන්න. Okay. Let's do the other one as well. That means for the LIFO method, we can have the same structure. Right. So the 1st of May, the values are same. Right. So we have $50 per unit and 600 units, and the total valuation is 30,000, right? And then for the LIFO method, keep in mind you have to take the most recent units for the production, right? So the unit price for this 500 units would be 50. It's 25,000, right? So the units remaining would be 600 minus 500, should be 100 units. And the valuation is 30,000 minus 25,000, which is $5,000. Right? That is at the end of 2nd of May. And on 12th of May, there is a receipt of 800 units, and the unit price is 51.5. The value is 800 into 51.5, which is 41,200. And at the end of the day, there is an increase of the units by 800. So you have to add 800 to 100, which is the total number of units would be 900. And the valuation will also be increased. So you have to add 5,000 to 41,200, which is 46,200. And then 21st of May, you have issue of 400 units. You have to take the most recent one, which is from here, right? And the valuation is 400 into 51.5, which is 20,600. We have to deduct the consumption units, which is 900 minus 400, which is 500 units will be available. And out of this 46,200, you have to deduct 20,600, which will be 46,200 times 20,600. 25,600. Right? So the exam you can use a calculator, right? And on 29th May, there is another issue of 150 units. The value is 51.5. The total value is 7,725. The units remaining at the end of the day, it's 350 units. Valuation would be 25,600 minus 7,725. So the valuation is 17,875. Right? Okay. So you can see if you use FIFO method, you have that is the FIFO method. You have the profit of 18,025, and if you use LIFO method, you have a profit of 17,875. Right? So normally the closing balance would be added back. Sorry, would be deducted from cost of sales. That means your profit will be increased if the closing stock is increased. So if you use in this situation, if you use FIFO, you have a higher profit. And if you use LIFO, you have a lower profit. Right? ඔයගොල්ලන්ට profit එක වැඩි කරලා පෙන්නන්න ඕන නම් මේ වෙලාවේදී FIFO use කරන්න පුළුවන්. profit එක අඩු කරලා පෙන්නන්න ඕන නම් ඔයගොල්ලන්ට LIFO use කරන්න පුළුවන්. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් price increase එකක් වෙනවා නම්, ඒ කියන්නේ inflation එකක් තියෙනවා නම් ගොඩක් වෙලාවට FIFO use කරොත් වැඩි profit එකක් පෙන්වන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද closing stock valuation එක වැඩි හින්දා. right? right. ඔයගොල්ලෝ ලියාගන්න මේක කරේ නැත්තම්. right. හරි. අපි පොඩි break එකකට යමු. දැන් වෙලාව 10:36යි 37ක් වගේ. අපි ඕකේ 11ට විතර හම්බ වෙමු. අපි 12ට මේක ඉවර කරනවා. 11ට හම්බ වෙලා අපි ඉතුරු ටික කරමු. ඇල්කෝ මෙතඩ් එකයි ඊළඟට පීරියඩික් weighted average එකයි. තව පොඩි theory parts ටිකක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ටික ඉවර කරලා අද දවස අපි complete කරමු. right? අපි එහෙනම් 11ට හම්බ වෙමු. right? Eat at 11 after the break. ඊපු නැති කට්ටිය මේක ලියා ගන්න. අනිත් කට්ටිය බ්‍රේක් එකක් කරන්න. right? Right, everyone. Okay, so let's move. So now we will discuss about the ALCO method, right? So average method, the cumulative weighted average pricing method, or ALCO, calculates a weighted average price for all units in inventory. Issues are priced at the average cost. Right. So we will do the same example in the ALCO method, right? Right. Unlike other methods, in this method, you have to calculate the average value, but you don't need to keep track of specific receipts, right? Because at the end of the day, you are calculating the average price, right? Okay. So 1st of May, there is a balance of 100 units. Per unit cost is $2. Total cost is 200. 3rd of May, right? Okay. 3rd of May, we have a receipt of 200 and the unit price is 2.10 and unit price 2.10. Total cost would be $840, right? And then total amount would be 100 plus 840, sorry, 100 plus 400, which would be 500, right? 500 units, and the total cost would be $200 plus 840, which is 1,000, right? So in the previous two methods, we only calculate the quantity and the total. But in here, we have to calculate the average unit price, right? So average unit price would be the total cost, which is 1,040 divided by 500, right? Which would be $2.08, right? $2.08. That is the average figure. Keep in mind, this is the important thing, right? You need to calculate the average price, right? The next step, I will show you why we calculate the average price. Right? Then we have an issue of 200 units on 4th of May, right? 4th of May, we have 200 units issued. And in this one, we are not using the latest price or we are not using the oldest price. We are using the average figure of the previous day. So the average figure here is 2.08. 2.08, right? That is the average figure. And then the total cost would be 200 into 2.08, right? 416. And at the end of the day, it'll be 500 minus 200, which is 300. The total cost would be 1,040 minus 216. How much? 416. So 40 minus 416 will be 624. 624, right? Okay. So what do you think about the average figure? Will it be changed? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ average figure එක ආපහු calculate කරන්න ඕනේද issue එකක් අපි production එකට issue කරාට පස්සේ? අත්‍යවශ්‍ය නැහැ. මොකද එහෙම calculate කරත් ඒ ගානම තමයි එන්නේ. මොකද අපි රිසීව් කරොත් තමයි අපේ ඇවරේජ් කොස්ට් එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ කොස්ට් එක වෙනස් වෙන්නේ. right? රිසීව් වෙනස් ගානකට රිසීව් කරොත් right? වෙනස් ගානකට රිසීව් කරොත් අපේ ඇවරේජ් කොස්ට් එක වෙනස් වෙනවා. නැත්නම් වෙනස් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. So in this record, we don't need to calculate the average price because it's the same. Reason is, if there is a change in the purchasing price in the receipts, then the average price will change. But in a case where there is an issue to the production, then the average price won't change. It will be the same. Right? What I want to calculate kalbalana. 624 divided by 300 should be 2.08. 2.08 में तमाही वेनसा. Right? Now on 9th of May, there is a receipt of 300 units, right? 300 units, there is a receipt of 300 units on 9th of May, and the cost is 2.12. And the total cost would be 300 into 2.12, which is 636, right? So there's a receipt of 636. You have to increase the number of units and add back the units that is received. So total would be 600, and you have to add the valuation of the receipt to the previous day inventory valuation. So it will be $624 plus 636. Right. 624 plus 636 is 1,260. දැන් මොකද කියන්නේ? ඔයගොල්ලන්ට හිතෙනවද දැන් average price එක calculate කරන්න ඕනේ කියලා? Yes, you have to calculate the average price because you have purchased 300 units at a different price. It's 2.12, not 2.08. So you have to calculate the average price would be 1,260 divided by 600 units, which will be 2.10. 2.10. So 2.10. Right. Then on 11th of May, there is another issue of 400 units. Right? 400 units, and you have to take this figure, the average figure. It's 2.10, that average figure, in order to do the calculation. So the total cost would be 200 into 2.10, which would be 840. 840. Right? So the total units would be 600 minus 400. The reason is you are issued 400 units out of 600 to the production. Right? Remaining is 200 units. And the total cost would be 1,260 minus 840. How much? 1,260 minus 840. 420. Right. And on 18th May, 18th May, there is a receipt of 400 units and $2.4 into 240, right? 240. And yeah. So the total units would be 200 plus 100, which would be 300 units. And evaluation would be 420 plus 240. 2 right? 420 plus 2 So the valuation would be 660. Okay. And now you have to calculate the average figure. The reason is the price has been changed, the purchase price changed. Value would be 2.20. And 20th May, there is another issue of 100 units. So you have to take the average figure 2.2, right? And 220 is the cost, and 300 minus 100, which at the end of the day, the receipt quantity would be 200, and the total cost would be 660 minus 220, which is 240. 240, right? So the total cost of sales equals 216 plus 840 plus 250, right? It's 1460. And the closing value is 440, right? 440. Got it? So only difference is the calculation of the average price. And now you can see that you don't need to track the remaining balance of the batches and so on. It's pretty straightforward. What you need to do is at the end of the day, you have to calculate the average price. And when you do issue of the issue from the warehouse for the production flow, then you have to take the average figure to calculate the valuation, right? Any questions? Okay, we'll proceed. So we have these pros and cons in the ALCO method. The advantages would be fluctuations in prices are smoothed out, and it'll be easier for decision making. And it's easier for the administration, right? Compared to FIFO and LIFO method, because you don't need to identify each batch separate. That's the reason. You don't need to identify, you need to allocate the space for the other batches to identify separately. Otherwise, in the FIFO and LIFO method, it's difficult to keep on track. But in ALCO, you are calculating average price. You don't need to track the batches that you purchase separately. But there are certain disadvantages as well. So you can see that the calculated price, right? The average price. So it's very hardly that these prices are actual prices, right? ඒ කියන්නේ මේ average price එක හැමතිස්සෙම calculated අගයක් වෙනවා actual market price එකේ අගය වෙන්නේ නැහැ, right? And prices tend to lag a little bit behind current market value in an inflationary situation because we are taking the average figure. So the average figure will be less than the current market value. Okay, I will give you 8 minutes, right? 8 minutes. Can you do this? මේක කරන්න මේගොල්ලෝ මේක කළා මට ආන්සර්ස් ටික දාන්න සම්පත් හොඳයි එයා වැඩ කළා පේනවා අනිත් අය ඒගොල්ලොත් තේරෙන නැති දෙයක් අහන්න නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලොත් කරන්න මේවා මොකද එක්සෑම් එකට මේ වගේ වෙනවා right Right. Okay. Let's do this as well using the I4 method. Not LIFO, sorry, ALCO method. Right. On 5th of June, there is a balance of $75, and on 8th of June, there is a 8th of June, there is a receipt of 20 units and $3 per unit, and the total cost is 60. So we have to add back the 30 units to 20, which is 50 units. And the total cost would be 75 plus the total purchase price 60, which is 135. Right. So we have to calculate the average figure, which would be 135 divided by 50, 2.7, right? 2.7. Right. And then on 10th of June, there is a issue of 10 units. So we need to calculate it by using the figure 2.7. So it's 27. And yet, at the end of the day, the units decrease by 10 units. So it will be 40 units. And the average price is same. So the total valuation is 135 minus 27, $118, right? And on 14th June, there is another issue of 20 units, and the value is also same. I mean, the unit price is same, the average figure is same. And the total cost would be 54, and the units at the end of the day reduced by 20. Any quantity would be $20, and the total valuation is 118 minus 54, which is 64, right? And on 18 June, there is another receipt of 40 units. Value is 2.4. It's 2.4 into 2p, which is $96, right? And at the end of the day, the quantity has been increased by 4. So the balance units would be for 60. Sorry, balance units would be 60. And the valuation increased by $96, which would be $160, right? Okay. Now you need to calculate the average figure because the purchase price has been changed. So the average figure would be $160 divided by 60, which is 2.67, 2.67, right? And finally, on 20th June, there is a reduction. Sorry, there's an issue of 6 units. So you have to calculate you have to take the average figure, 2.67, and the valuation of the 6 units would be 16. And then the total value would be, the quantity units would be 60 minus 6, 54. And the valuation is 160 minus 16. This is the average figure. I think it's fine. Yeah. It's 100 and actually it's 160. Yeah, 144. If you are not done, you can just write this down. It's fine. Okay, sorry. There is a mistake. 135 minus 27. Yes, it's 110. Good catch. Good. Nice. Right. So we have done it. Good. Right. So if you are not done, you can take a screenshot. It's fine to, I mean, since there are some decimal rounding issues, it's fine. You can round up, either round up, round down. It's doesn't matter. So only matter is that you have understand the concept and calculate according. Right? Okay, we can move to the next one. Okay, I will give you 5 minutes because it's not that difficult. I will give you 5 minutes. Try to do this quickly. Right, let's do this. Okay, let me take a copy of this. Right. Right, it's the same question that we have done earlier for LIFO and FIFO. So it says that in on 1st of May, there is an opening balance, right? Opening balance of 600 units and 50 each. So altogether it's 30,000. And on 20th May, there's an issue of 500 units. And the figure should be 50 because the average price is also 50. And then after issuing the goods, the units available are 100 units in the warehouse, and the cost or the valuation would be 5,000. And on 12th May, there's a receipt, right? So this is important. So there's a receipt of 800, and the cost is 51.5. So the total cost would be 800 into 51.5, which is 41,200. So you have to add that units to the at the end of the day, which would be 800 plus 100, which would be 900. And the amount would be 5,000. That's the valuation of the previous day. And we have to add that receipt valuation to the previous day valuation. So it will be 5,000 plus 41,200, which would be 46,200. And then we need to calculate the average figure. So it will be 46,200 divided by 900. It's $51.33, right? $51.33. And on 20th May, there is another issue of 400 units. And the calculation should be taken from 51.33. And the valuation is 51.33 into 200 is 20,533, right? And so at the end of the day, the units would be 900 minus 200, which will be 500 units. And the valuation is 46,200 minus 20,533, which will be 46,200 minus 20,500 is 25,667. That's right. Okay. And then on 29th May, there is another issue of 150 units, and the total value, sorry, the valuation is same, 51.33. And the amount would be 51.33 into 150, which is 7,007. The number of units that remaining at the end of the month would be 500 minus 150, which is 350. And the valuation is 25,667 minus 7,700. See, it's 25,667 minus 7,700, which would be 17,967, right? So that is the valuation, right? If you are not done, you can have a screenshot. Right? Take a screenshot if you are not done. Okay, now we can move to the next one. That is another method. We call it as periodic weighted average price. So in the periodic weighted average price, there is a formula. So by applying that formula, you can have kind of a periodic weighted average value. That is a fixed value for that period, right? This is more easier than compared to the other two. You need only to apply the formula. Then you can find out what will be the per unit, the average figure, periodic average figure. And then you have to apply that to the formula, the closing balance to find out the closing valuation. We will do an example, right? So we will take this example. Yeah, these examples we can take. Right. So here you can see there are some certain days there are receipts, 3 receipts, and 4 issues, right? And the purchase price is also given, right? And here the number of receipts, and this is the number of issues. So the difference will be the closing balance, right? So first you need to write the formula that is periodic weighted average equals cost of opening inventory plus total cost of the receipts divided by units of opening inventory plus total units to receive. So here the cost of opening inventory and the total cost, that will be 800 units into $30 plus then the other receipt would be 600 units into $35 plus 600 units to $40, right? Divided by units of opening inventory and the receipts would be 2000. See, it's 800 plus 600 plus 600. Here the value would be $34.50 per unit. So no need to write this down. This is in the tute, right? So this is the periodic weighted average value. And then you can calculate the closing units It will be the receipts minus issues, which is 2000 minus 1600, which is 200 units. So the closing inventory value equals $34.5 into 400, which will be 13,800, right? 13,800. So what I did was I just apply this formula. It will be periodic weighted average equals cost of opening inventory and the total cost of the receipts divided by the total of the receipts plus the opening inventory. And after that, you can multiply that periodic average figure with the closing units in order to calculate the closing inventory value. Understood? Right. Okay. We'll do another example. So this one, yeah, I will give you, yeah, 4 minutes or 5 minutes. Quickly do it. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can ask. The formula මේක තමයි formula එක ඔයාලට ඒක apply කරන්න තියෙන්නේ, right? Right? Within another 4 minutes remaining, so you can try to do this. Okay, let's do this as well. Right. Yeah. So it says on 5th of June, there is a opening balance of 30. 8th of June, receipt of the 20 and 18, 40. Right. So for the first of opening inventory, 75 plus that is opening inventory and 60 and again 96 divided by the number of units would be 30 plus 20 plus 40. Right? So plates again plus it's 231 divided by say 90. That will be 2.5667. So I can just add up only to two terms, right? Or only to two decimals, right? That is the weighted period, weighted average cost, right? So you are supposed to calculate the value of D. D means the total balance, right? The closing balance. So we have to calculate the closing units. Closing units would be the total units, say 90 is the total units minus number of issues would be 36, right? 36, which would be 54 units. For the closing inventory valuation equals 54 units into 2.57 138.78, right? 138.7. Right. That's the answer. If you are not done, you can just take a screenshot. Okay, with that, we can conclude our session for today. And there are some theoretical parts that I need to cover. I will cover it in next week. We have no ordinary class, right? Ordinary class. So if you are not done, you can write this. I will keep this until you are writing, and right, we can wind up for today, right? Okay. Any questions so far on what we did? Okay, if you have no questions, you can wind up and please write this so you can take a screenshot if you have not done. Right. And thank you very much for your participation today.